buying the property, are you acquiring it under an LLC or are you acquiring it under some type of land trust or something to circumvent having the due on sale clause? What's your action? What's your plan?
Good question. So if I can add a little context to that. So when you're buying a property subject to or on terms and you're making payments on somebody else's note, the boogeyman is that the due on sale clause can get called. And even though it affects 2% of loans or less, it still happens. I've done about just over 200 sub-2s, and I had my first one called this past year. Now, I negotiated with them, everything was good, we did a contract for deed, different side tangent, but we solved it without me having to pay them off in full, okay? And a majority of these you can solve, okay? But a way that you can circumvent that, or not circumvent it, but make it harder for the lender to be able to see that there was a change in ownership, is by buying in a land trust. I currently don't do that. I'm not that sophisticated. Again, it's only 2% of all loans. So maybe if I start doing 1,000 or more and my risk is higher because I have all these other notes, I might start doing it, but I just do LLCs for now, for the terms deals, yeah. And when we're wholesaling them, we also make the seller and buyer sign a hold harmless document that's like, hey, whatever happens from here, and I can, whoever wants that, I can share it with anybody here. But whatever happens from here, we're not liable, basically.
Well, I've got one.
Yeah.
So I noticed that you had a multifamily, was that one?
Yeah.
You said one call.
Yeah.
Is it the same kind of process to call on multifamily as it is for like single family homes, residential? Because I'm very familiar with the single family wholesaling, but I didn't even think about multifamily, on that scale.
Yeah, good question. So an easy place that you can get your data that not a lot of people know about is Pioneer Title, or like our title company. We can ask them for entire zip codes of data, and they can pull it with owner name, address, tax assessed value, what type of property it is, single family, commercial, multifamily, and then you can sort on all of that, size of the house, price point, right? And so if you want to get a multifamily deal, you can sort just on multifamily and make that all of your data and all of your calling and texting.
And are you looking for the same thing, distressed seller, tax income fees, that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah.
What if it's an LLC?
Same thing, you can still find their contact information. Yeah, there's multiple websites that are called skip tracers, and you just plug in, you upload your data list and they scour the internet for data and they can find contact information, so. Yeah.
On a list that you're pulling like that, what would be a qualification for a distressed seller?
So if we're getting a list from Pioneer Title, like a bulk list, there's not really any indication of distress. Maybe age might be a filter of like age of the property, because the older it is, the more work it might need. But if I'm looking to target a distress list, these lists, the county lists, so code violations, tax delinquent, probate, utility shutoffs, pre-foreclosure, or vacants, with the exception of vacants, all of these are available at your county courthouse for free. Now, you might have to talk to a few different people to talk to the right person who knows where to get it, but it is there and it does exist and it is public record. It's totally free and it's there for you. So,
is that the county assessor, or which, when you say the county list, where do you go?
The county clerk.
Okay.
Yeah. And depending on your county or area, it could be a different location. Like it's either Ada or Canyon County. I don't know if it's still this way because my team does it, but you used to have to like go in person and log onto this like Windows 95 computer in the corner that was dark and like print out this janky PDF. And then like, yeah, exactly, right? But the harder it is to get information or data, the harder it is for everybody else too, right? Yeah.
Why code violation?
Code violation, this is like, hey, you got junk cars in your driveway, your lawn's overgrown, you got something that looks awful about the property, those kind of things, yeah.
Sorry, does someone else have a question? I have another question.
Go for it.
I'm surprised no one's asking questions. I'm sorry about that.
I always got more questions.
I've got 100 questions.
Let's go.
The question was going to be realtor versus non-realtor, right? So agent versus non-agent.
Yeah.
When you're doing wholesales, I know that the states by states vary, and some of them are requiring that you have a license, some are cracking down on it.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that Idaho doesn't have that,
No, not yet.
and, right, I mean, hopefully not. But if you're working as an agent, right, as a licensed person, do we have to have, and I don't know if you know the rule or not, because I haven't investigated this myself, but do you have to close, or do a double close in order to do a wholesale legitimately, or is it just, you're disclosing for a huge profit, whatever the case is, and you can close and just assign it?
I don't know the answer to that question because I'm not a realtor. Do you?
So yeah, I can answer that question. So you have to be upfront, right? That you're assigning the deal.
Right.
So on the RE21, you mark that it's assignable. So and then there's an assignment form that you do as well. So I got a deal under contract. It was a great deal, and I just, I was getting paid by the seller, and so what I told my buyer was, use me to list it, and I'm not going to charge you anything, right? And so then I just decided, if you want to do a fee, I mean, you have to talk to your broker.
Right.
But typically that's going to have to go through your brokerage as well, and they're going to take a cut. Some brokerages will allow you to, like if you're doing it as an LLC, then you might be able to get paid separately as like a different division. So, but you have to talk to your broker about that.
Yeah, I've done several of them were assignments, and they did not go through the brokerage. It was just paid straight out to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, these kind of follow real estate rules.
Just disclose, basically. And I guess it sounds like both of you are licensed, so do you have to have all the funds in the bank account in order to legitimately put the deal under contract in order to say, hey, I can actually close on this in the event? Like you don't
No,
want
not
to.
usually. So any of them that I've done, and then you can speak to this as well. So there's been several times I've come in and put something on a contract before I had to have proof of funds, before I had to have earnest money down sometimes.
Right.
I would sign it before then.
Yeah.
And then that would kick over to them. Now they would have to do the funds.
That's good stuff.
And how do you handle proof of funds, Ryan?
Not often. Not.
The last time I did, they didn't ever ask for proof of funds.
I mean, like when we're selling a property, we always ask for it, right? But the type of buyers or the type of sellers that we work with, like they're in a situation, right? They're either not sophisticated enough to ask or they don't care. They just want to know that you're there to solve their problem, right? And help them. So, and to that note, I think regulations are a good thing. I think having to be licensed to wholesale properties is a good thing. Because right now, wholesaling, especially in Idaho, is like the wild, wild west. And it's annoying to have people that have no idea what they're doing just locking up properties under contract. That's why like the first one I ever did when I didn't know what I was doing, I backed into the deal from the buyer, right? The problem with wholesalers now is they're just going willy-nilly locking stuff up under contract that they have no business or ability to sell because they don't know what they're doing. So I think regulations are a good thing there. Yeah.
So if somebody just starting out, one man band, one gal band, would you suggest going the title route list and dialing, or driving for dollars and looking for distressed properties, both? How would you value or evaluate those two strategies?
Yeah, I think driving for dollars is probably best. For those of you that don't know what that is, you're just driving around looking for houses that are in some form of visual distress. You're writing down the address, you're uploading those address to a skip tracer, getting their contact information and contacting them. Now, the important part is that this doesn't become a distraction from having conversations, because talking to sellers is our highest revenue generating activity. It's not driving around in a car, right? So I know it's hard to talk to people on the phone and face rejection and talk to strangers, but you're not going to be good at it when you start out. It just requires practice, that's all. And sometimes years. So give yourself some grace, for goodness sakes. Just give yourself some grace doing this.
Neil, do you have a question?
Yeah. How many years did you do this before quitting your corporate job?
Yeah, good question. So I quit my corporate job in 2021. So I did it for about 3 years, double dipping. I was too calculated. I had to replace my income fully before I quit, which was probably dumb because I was still only doing it like 5 to 10. Yeah, I had to do it for like 4 or 5 years prior. Double dipping. I could have been way further along had I quit earlier. Right. But that's the journey of the entrepreneur, that valley of despair and the security blanket of the consistent paycheck. Once you go out on your own, it's scary. You have to have either an undying belief in yourself, which I didn't, or you have to have some kind of nest egg of, oh, this makes me feel like I can really go for it. Depends on what kind of personality you are.
Question on forms when you're getting started, or like documents. Where did you find your documents, and then what can people use? Or like, I'm just talking about exit clauses and if they're going to use a contract to, for the agreement and stuff. What did you use?
Yeah, first of all, anybody that wants mine, just shoot me a text and I'll send it to you. I think we got it from Pioneer Title's attorney back in the day, and they wrote it. Because that's the other thing too, even with creative finance, I've had different title and escrow agents say, no, we don't do those types of deals. And then I talk to somebody else in their same branch and they're like, oh yeah, we do those all the time. And so it's like, how in the world? But so there's that kind of thing. Like early in the days, a lot of people didn't know what an assignment even was. So that's why we had the title company write it up themselves.
Who introduced you to this? Where'd you learn?
Good question. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dan Walters. He's an Idaho native. I bought a rental property 50-50 with Corey as an engineer, like before the off-market stuff, just off of Craigslist. I found a property on Craigslist that looked like it was a good deal, and the guy was a wholesaler, or he wholesaled it to me. But I didn't know until I saw the closing statement, and I was like, what is this assignment fee? What is that? Oh, Dan, tell me, what is this? You just made 20 grand from this? Like, dude, teach me your ways, right? And so like, I would have never known if I hadn't kind of stumbled into it. Yeah, just by chance. Yeah.
How do you deal with it when a seller is regretful to signing the contract?
Oh, so the question is, what do we do with sellers that either get seller's remorse or are upset? Can I preface it real quick? 9 times out of 10, it's because after they've signed, they've talked to friends, family members, relatives, a realtor, and they were like, you screwed up so much, I can get you way more for the property.
Yeah, that's like 10 times out of 10.
10 times out of 10.
The biggest thing is like, why? And that's what we go into. And most of the time what they're telling us is that somebody told me I got more. Somebody told me I'm an idiot. I feel like I'm invalidated. And so you just have to address that. And most of the time it's just letting them vent about it. And in a lot of the cases, what happens is there's this period where within like 2 or 3 days, they get really upset. And you have to bear through that and just not give in. And when I say like, be there to acknowledge, be there to listen, but just don't accept their, I want to get out of this. Afterwards, you're generally going to find that they still have the same motivation. They sold to you for a reason. They have the same issue that has not been solved. And by going with somebody else, sure, they might have an idea that they can get more money, but it's not certain. And so you get the opportunity then to try to readdress that issue and work with them. And we have probably like 80+% rate of getting those to go through. And it's just because you're there to listen and hear them what the real issue is. Every once in a while, we'll find somebody who is really disgruntled and who just has said, I'm drawing a line in the sand. In that event, we actually will sometimes, depending on the situation, if it makes sense for the company, send them a legal letter because we have a legally binding contract. And that brings a lot of people back into the fold because, again, their underlying issue didn't change. Every once in a while, that doesn't go the case, and we could record a memorandum of contract. Rarely, it's also the case we'll accept a small settlement or we let them out depending on the deal. So it really depends on the situation. If there's like a very legitimate reason, but I can't tell you how many times people, like a lady that we're actually going live with on the market, told us that we met with her twice. We've got all the recordings. And then she said, you took advantage of me. I'm a single mother who has a mentally disabled child, or have a mentally disabled child who's threatened to commit suicide multiple times in the last week. You guys took advantage of me. You're awful humans. How do you run a business like this? We're going live on her property in 2 days. And she's pleasant. And the comment I got from the realtor partners that we're working with is, yeah, she seems really nice. Funny, right? She was just stressed. She had a lot going on in her life.
Yeah, thank you. There's a reason why I called up Corey to answer that question, because that's literally what he does on a daily basis. He will never say it because he's super humble, but he is like the most disarming person ever, and his level of patience and like goodwill in his soul to genuinely help people feel that. So when he's like 80 or 85% of these we can get to across the finish line, it's because your heart's in the right place. It's very important. Right? This is where people get confused, is like, yes, we like all the nice things that wholesaling does and finding off-market deals does. But if you're doing it for money, people can tell. People can tell, and you can look at our Google reviews and see how many people we've helped out of foreclosure and all these things just because we want to help and serve. And the irony is, that's why we're giving out the Go Giver as the book, is because you do more business when you treat people like that. They can feel that. It's so hard for people to wrap around in their head. So,
I forgot to mention the extension.
good point. So if somebody's upset with us, we always try to find out why. So if somebody's being open and honest with us about why, obviously we want to work with that person and try give them an extension or come up a little bit in price, like whatever it takes just to get the deal done, right? So an extension is always the easiest way to do that. If they're not honest with us or they're just not responding, that's where our hands are kind of tied, where we're like, what else do you expect us to do here, kind of thing. So,
Well, let's do one more.
yeah.
Did you want a question?
Yeah, kind of back to what Brian was saying earlier. Say you're a beginner, you're driving around looking for places, you make some cold calls, or you find numbers and get cold calls, and somebody says, yes, I'd like to sell my place. Then what?
Yep. Good question. In the slide, so when I was talking about we don't qualify on price. So when somebody says that they're interested to sell, we don't just say, oh, how much do you want for it? Don't do that. Instead, we ask, what's your rough timeline to sell it? It's a very disarming, open-ended question that gets them talking about whatever might be going on in their situation. Or, you called me, I'm not looking to sell, only if you pay me highest and best price and this much over Zillow, and then that's the only way I'll move. Okay, well then that's not a lead, right? But that's why we ask timeline first, because it's a way less threatening question to a seller, and you'll find out a lot more information. So our team, it's timeline. What happens if you don't sell this summer? Are you okay to stay put another year? Sounds like you want to stay there another 5 to 10 years. Oh, whoa, a really exaggerated statement. We make those kind of assumptive statements because then I want him to correct me. I want him to say, whoa, 5 to 10 years? No, like 2 years max. So timeline, you'll find out way more information about people because they don't feel threatened. When it's about price, it's like either I win or you win. One of us has to lose, right? We don't want to create that kind of dynamic. So then after you've established timeline, then it's, is this a viable person that's looking to sell? If they do have a timeline, if they've already started looking for a place to go or started planning next steps to look at other properties, maybe they have a job that's taking them out of state, like whatever the situation is, go meet with them. If they're about an hour outside of drive time, that's generally when we do like a virtual appointment, like a Zoom or Google Meet. If they're older and they might not be tech savvy, we just do a phone call. But anything that we can do to get face-to-face with somebody that is looking to seriously move is the way to go.
And then paperwork you would want to have with you?
Yeah, we always carry a contract with us. What else? With a couple addendums.
Yeah, like a document to be able to open escrow, so you can get that from my title company.
Yeah.
It's one pager. And then if you're looking for like, well, I don't even know what I can offer on this, look at the county tax assessed, especially if it's in Ada or Canyon County. It's all public record, really easy. And if you're anywhere from like 60 to probably 75, 80% even, depending if it's a really nice house, you've got a good deal.
Yeah, our general rule of thumb is we don't pay attention to Zillow very much. Number one, because Idaho's a non-disclosure state, so the numbers aren't really accurate, especially like the further out you go, oh my gosh, it's like a shot in the dark. Tax assessed value is like our rough rule of thumb. We know that if we're under tax assessed value, a majority of the time, it's going to be a decent deal for us. Of course, there's a lot of variables. I'm just saying as a very rough rule of thumb, condition plays a huge factor, but like that's more of the gauge that we use versus Redfin, Realtor.com, Zillow, all that.